Hello, this video will explain how you can create a worry box like we use at Britannia Village where students can share any worries or concerns and you will get notified. Um, so these are the instructions that will be linked below the video somehow. And the first thing to do is make a copy of this Google form by clicking on that link. So Google form is like an online survey tool where anyone who has access to the internet can click on it and fill in the answers. So we've just made a copy there by clicking that link. So this is now our Google form that's saved into it will have saved into your own Google Drive, so you can edit it and change it however you like. Um, so it just says if there are things which are making you sad, angry, or upset, please let us know what it is to see if there's anything we can do. And then there are just a few questions to add in their name, say how they're feeling, multiple choice, and then what is making you feel like this. Um, the way you can get the link to this is by going to send and then choosing the link. So um, this gives you a URL, you can shorten it, that you could add to your school website, or you could email to parents, or you could put it onto Google Classroom, or however you interact with students. Um, and then if a student goes onto it, this is what it would look like. So yeah, same questions, but then they can type in the answers. So for example, I'll just write in test, I feel sad. What is making you feel like this? The weather. And then click submit. Um, and so that's what the students would see. Now there is a way that you can, if you go to responses, that shows where the responses come in. You can either see summaries, or you can go to individual and see what each person has said. So, for example, I just said, now you can, by going to these three dots, you can put on email notifications. Um, but we found that that was limited in that, first of all, when you got the email, it didn't actually tell you what the person said. It just gave you a link to go in and see the responses. And it would only send an email to you, your own email address. Then you would have to forward that on to other people if you wanted others to see what they said. So we've created a few more steps that uses some coding that would send these responses in an email to, well, whoever you want to. So it could be your own email address and maybe your designated safeguarding lead, or maybe the class teacher, or however you would like to do it at your school. So now I'm going to explain the next steps for doing that. So starting from step 2, you go to responses. So usually by default you can see the questions, but if you go to responses and then click this green um, sheets icon and go to create, that creates a new Google sheet that's linked to that Google form. So as you can see here, it's created the headings, which were the questions, and then it's also created a new row with the first kind of, well, what I put in with test, sad, and the weather. And then the first thing to do is to go down to the bottom left corner of the sheet and click the plus. So that creates a new sheet. So down here you can see this is form responses 1, and that's linked with the Google form icon, and that's live. So if I filled it in again, another row would come in here with that information. And if I click add sheet, down here it's added another one called sheet 2. Don't rename any of these as well, because that will mess up the code. And then in cell A1 on the new sheet, it says type in the email addresses separated by a comma if you've got more than one, of anyone who should receive notifications. So I'm going to type in my own, luke@bvtraining.co.uk. And let's say as well, I wanted to the responses to the email to a designated safeguarding lead. I'm just going to call this user1 at bvtraining.co.uk. And I separated those with a comma. So then the next step, and you can always come back to this and add in more email addresses or take some out, and you can change any of the other cells or change the color. It's up to you. So here's where it starts to get a little bit more complicated. So in the Google Sheet, you go to Tools and Script Editor, and this is where you can create scripts that automate your processes or create emails automatically. And this is called Google Apps Scripts that we're going to use. So the first thing, you can just delete the code that's already there. Just delete all of it, highlight it all so there's nothing left. And then if you go back to the instructions and you click this link, here is the code, and I'm just going to use Control A to highlight it all and then Control C to copy it. Here is the code that we're going to copy and paste into this script editor. So I'll paste it in. You can see it's the same text, but it's just put it into colors because that's just how it works. And this is the code. I won't go into much detail with this, but essentially this is what creates the email. So you'll see it will say on the email, hello, someone has added a worry box, first name, and then the variables are, well, that's the information that's been fed into this Google Sheet. So then I'm going to save that by using this save icon. And you can give it a name if you want to, but I'm just going to save it as untitled. And then next we're going to add a trigger. So that the coding bit's done. This is all here. But if we add a trigger, that means we won't have to manually go into this script editor and click run this function. I'm just going to go to edit and then current project triggers. And down in the bottom right, there's a add trigger. And all of these are kind of by default on the right setting. So we want to run the my function from the head, from spreadsheet. That's all. Leave that as it is. But this one we're going to change to on form submit. That means whenever a student or anyone fills in the form and clicks submit, it will run that bit of code, which will create the email, which will send it to whoever you wanted it to send to. Click save. Now here's where it asks you for permissions because it's going to be using your email. It's going to send emails from your account, whoever is creating this project. And it also wants to have access to that Google Sheet because it needs to be able to look at this to see who to send it to. And it needs to be able to look at this to see what information to send in the email. And it can't do that automatically. You have to click allow. Then that is done. So now we just need to test it. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to close that. I'm going to add in another. Imagine I'm a student. This time, John. So I'm feeling angry because I lost the remote. Click submit. Now, what should be happening is that when I click submit, that should have triggered the code, which should have generated an email and sent an email. You can see here it's added in a new row of data there. And so it should send the email to these two email addresses. So now if I check my email, I should see probably two emails because it will do the other one as well. Yeah. So here it sent the first one. So hello, someone's added a worry box submission test. I feel sad because of the weather. And you can see there it's also sent it to user one. And then in the next email it says, yeah, hello, someone's added a worry box submission named John Doe, feel angry and lost the remote. So that works. And if you ever want to change it or you want to change the users that it's sending the email to, you can just change that in from the Google Sheet. And yeah, I think that's everything. So hopefully that makes sense and it's clear and straightforward. If you need any help, feel free to get in touch with us at Britannia Village and we will do our best to try and help you get this set up and working.